Before we begin, a fair warning. This video is not for everyone. If you prefer comfort over truth, if you're deeply attached to the version of reality you've been handed, or if the idea of questioning everything you've ever believed makes you uneasy, this is your moment to walk away. No judgment, just choice. But if you're still here, if you've always sensed something was off, a fracture in the script, a whisper behind the curtain, then you're not alone. And you're exactly where you need to be. By the end of this video, you won't just understand why reality feels so fragile. You'll start to see it for what it really is. You'll question your memories, your desires, even your sense of self. And in doing so, you might just begin to remember who you really are. This is not self-help, this is self-excavation. And if you're brave enough to keep going, your descent begins now. Have you ever woken with the unsettling certainty that the dream you just left was more real than the reality you've returned to? That brief moment when the boundaries dissolve and you can't remember which side of consciousness you truly belong to. What if that disorientation isn't confusion at all, but clarity? A momentary glimpse through the veil that separates illusion from truth? Look at your hands. Feel the weight of your body. Notice how the light falls across the room. All of it so convincingly solid, isn't it? But then again, so was the dream you had last night, until you woke up. What if the certainty you feel right now is merely another layer of dream? What if your entire existence, your memories, your relationships, your identity is nothing more than someone else's imagination? A character in a story being told by a consciousness you'll never meet? You've felt it, haven't you? Those inexplicable moments of déjà vu. Those coincidences too perfect to be random. The strange sense that you're being watched, even when you're alone. What if these aren't glitches in your perception, but in the simulation itself? What if your life isn't yours at all? The prison you inhabit isn't built of steel and concrete, but of presumptions so fundamental you've never thought to question them. The most secure cage is the one whose bars are invisible. You believe you're an individual with free will, moving through an objective world that exists independently of your perception. But what evidence do you actually have for any of this? Only your senses, the same senses that can be completely hijacked by dreams, hallucinations, and memories. I think, therefore I am, Descartes has declared. But who is this I that thinks? And what guarantee do you have that your thoughts are your own? You've been taught that reality is shared, that we all see the same sun, feel the same rain, inhabit the same world. But you've never once experienced anyone else's consciousness. You've only experienced your interpretation of others' reports about their experience. The trap isn't that reality might be an illusion. The trap is your unexamined conviction that it isn't. You feel the vertigo now, don't you? That subtle nausea that comes when the mind confronts a possibility too vast to comprehend. Your body knows what your thoughts resist, that everything you've ever taken for granted might be vapor. The philosopher Nick Bostrom calculated that at least one of these statements must be true. Advanced civilizations will go extinct before creating ancestor simulations. They will have no interest in creating such simulations, or we are almost certainly living in a simulation already. Which do you find more plausible? You've felt haunted by choices unmade, roads not taken, versions of yourself unlived. What if they weren't just possibilities? What if somewhere, in another iteration of the dream, they're as real as you are now? Perhaps the strangest prison is one where the captive believes they are free, where the dreamed believes they are awake, where the character believes they are the author. Your sense of being a continuous self moving through time, is it reality or merely narrative coherence? The dream doesn't need to be consistent. It only needs to continually convince you that it has been. René Descartes didn't stop at, "I think, therefore I am." He went further, questioning whether an evil demon might be systematically deceiving him about everything else. What if some malicious demon of the utmost power and cunning has employed all his energies in order to deceive me? What Descartes feared as demonic we might now understand as algorithmic. The simulation needs no malice to trap you, only parameters. Zhuangzi, the ancient Chinese philosopher, pondered this very dilemma when he wrote, "Once upon a time, I dreamt I was a butterfly, fluttering hither and thither. Soon I awakened, and there I was, veritably myself again. Now I do not know whether I was then a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or whether I am now a butterfly, dreaming I am a man." The boundary between dreamer and dreamed has always been more permeable than we care to admit. Plato's allegory of the cave doesn't go far enough. It's not just that you're mistaking shadows for reality. It's that you yourself might be nothing more than a shadow, cast by a light you'll never see. Philosopher David Chalmers suggests that if we are in a simulation, it doesn't make our lives any less meaningful. Even if I'm a brain in a vat or a simulation, my consciousness is still real, my experiences still matter. But does this comfort hold if you're not even the brain in the vat, but merely a subroutine in someone else's dream? Philip K. Dick, whose novels explored the fragility of reality, came to believe that we are living in a computer-programmed reality. In his final years, he wrote, "We are in a kind of prison, but do not know it." His fiction wasn't speculation, it was recognition. The philosopher Jean Baudrillard described our postmodern condition as one where simulation has replaced reality, where the map precedes the territory. The territory no longer precedes the map, nor does it survive it. It is nevertheless the map that precedes the territory, procession of simulacra that engenders the territory. Perhaps what we call reality is just the most persuasive fiction, a dream so convincing that even the dreamer has forgotten they're asleep. Nick Bostrom's simulation argument isn't just philosophy, it's probability. If technology continues advancing, ancestor simulations will become possible. If possible, they will be numerous. If numerous, the simulated consciousnesses will vastly outnumber the real ones. The math suggests that you, statistically speaking, are likely synthetic. Consider the phenomenon of reality shifting that has captivated millions online. People claiming to transfer their consciousness between realities through meditation and intention. Psychologists dismiss it as immersive daydreaming, but the experience itself remains genuine to those who practice it. In one study at the University of California, researchers found that 20% of participants reported experiences where they momentarily couldn't distinguish between dreams and reality. These weren't people with psychosis or delusions. They were typical college students whose certainty about reality occasionally glitched. The cultural phenomenon of the Mandela effect, where thousands share the same false memories, suggests something stranger than simple misremembering. When masses collectively recall events that never happened, what does this tell us about the stability of the past? The more firmly you believe you're in control of your life, the more susceptible you become to the invisible forces shaping your choices. Your preferences, desires, and fears. How many of them are truly yours, and how many were programmed by inputs you didn't choose? The double-slit experiment in quantum physics demonstrates that particles behave differently when observed. They shift from waves of probability to definite positions. Reality itself seems to respond to consciousness. But whose consciousness? If observation collapses wave functions, who is the ultimate observer of your life? The multiverse theory in physics suggests that every quantum possibility spawns its own universe. Infinitely branching realities, containing every version of you that could possibly exist. Which raises the question, why are you experiencing this particular version? What makes this thread of consciousness you and not the countless others? There's a true story of a man who dreamed of his daughter's death in vivid detail, only to have the exact scenario unfold days later. Skeptics call it coincidence. Believers call it premonition. What if it was neither? What if causality sometimes runs backward and the future can write the past? The most compelling aspect of the dream hypothesis isn't philosophical but experiential. You've had those moments, haven't you? When reality becomes thin. when synchronicities multiply beyond probability, when you briefly glimpse a pattern so vast and intricate that it could only be intentional. In psychological studies of memory, researchers consistently find that our recollections aren't recordings, but reconstructions, stories we tell ourselves that change slightly with each retelling. Your past isn't fixed. It's as fluid as a dream being rewritten. Virtual reality technology advances exponentially. We're approaching the point where simulated experiences will be indistinguishable from real ones. If this is our trajectory after merely decades of computing, imagine what civilizations thousands or millions of years more advanced might create. The brain itself may be a prediction machine rather than a perception device. Neuroscientist Anil Seth suggests that consciousness is a controlled hallucination, the brain's best guess about reality based on limited data. If consciousness itself is already a simulation, how would you know if you're in another layer of dream? This realization exacts its toll, doesn't it? The suspicion that nothing is as it seems leaves marks on your psyche, your relationships, your sense of purpose. You feel it when you catch yourself in the mirror and momentarily don't recognize your own reflection. That brief dissociation isn't mental illness, it's the veil thinning. You feel it in relationships that suddenly seem scripted, conversations that feel like you're reciting lines rather than speaking authentically. As if you and everyone around you are actors who've forgotten you're in a play. This is why peace feels elusive now. Why meaning seems to evaporate upon examination. Your nervous system is detecting the inconsistencies your conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. The inexplicable anxiety that ambushes you in mundane moments, grocery shopping, driving, sitting in meetings, isn't dysfunction, it's recognition. Some part of you knows what your rational mind rejects. That reality is far more fragile than it appears. Your sense of déjà vu has intensified, hasn't it? Not just familiar situations, but the uncanny feeling that you've lived this exact moment before. That you know what's coming next, until you try to grasp it and it slips away. The strange emotional echoes you experience, feeling profound sadness or joy with no apparent cause. What if these aren't random neural misfires? What if they're emotional states bleeding through from the dreamer whose mind you inhabit? Your dreams have become more vivid, more coherent, sometimes more real than your waking life. The boundaries between states of consciousness blur. You find yourself wondering which side is which. Those moments of inexplicable knowing, intuitions that prove correct against all odds, premonitions that materialize, connections that can't be coincidence. They're not mystical gifts. They're glimpses of the program running beneath perception. The emptiness you sometimes feel when achieving goals that once seemed meaningful. That's not depression. It's awakening to the arbitrary nature of the game. The sense that someone changed the rules without telling you. Every culture throughout history has created myths to explain existence. Gods, afterlives, moral laws woven into the fabric of reality. What are these but attempts to assign meaning to a world that offers no inherent purpose? Science replaced myth with mechanism. Cause and effect, physical laws, emergent complexity. But even our most sophisticated models can't bridge the explanatory gap between matter and consciousness. How does arrangement of atoms produce the experience of being you? They told you that you're a biological organism, evolved through natural selection, moving through an objective physical world. They never mentioned that this narrative rests on the same unprovable assumption as all others, that your perceptions correspond to what's actually there. Philosophy told you that either mind emerges from matter, or matter emerges from mind, or both emerge from something more fundamental. But what if mind and matter are both projections, characters and setting in the same dream? The institutions that shape consensus reality, science, religion, education, media, aren't conspiracies. They're manifestations of the dream's internal logic. The dream dreaming itself. Philosopher Bernardo Kastrup suggests that materialism, the view that matter is fundamental, is the least parsimonious explanation for reality. It requires us to believe that arrangements of non-conscious particles somehow generate consciousness, an explanatory leap far greater than assuming consciousness is fundamental. Consider how virtual particles in quantum physics pop in and out of existence when no one's looking, how observation itself determines whether light behaves as a wave or a particle. Reality, at its foundation, seems less like solid matter and more like mind. Religious traditions worldwide describe reality as illusory. Maya in Hinduism, emptiness in Buddhism, the world of appearances in Gnosticism. They didn't have computers to conceptualize simulation, but they recognized the dreamlike quality of existence. The accelerating complexity of our civilization mirrors the increasing complexity of our dreams as we approach waking. Information density multiplies. Time seems to compress. Coincidences multiply. Reality becomes more plastic, more responsive to intention. These aren't signs of progress, they're signs of imminent awakening. Even scientific materialism acknowledges that your experience of reality is a model constructed by your brain. Colors don't exist outside your mind, only wavelengths. Sounds are interpretations of pressure waves. The solid world you perceive is mostly empty space. You've never experienced reality directly, only your simulation of it. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger argues that no one has ever been or had a self. The sensation of being a continuous entity moving through time is itself a model generated by the brain, a useful fiction, a character in a story. If your sense of self is already an illusion, why not reality too? I won't offer you certainty. There is none. What I offer instead is a different relationship with uncertainty itself. You are not delusional. You are not losing touch with reality. You are gaining perspective on what reality might actually be. Here's your threshold moment. You can retreat back into comfortable presumptions, pretending you never glimpsed the fragility of the world. Or you can step further into the mystery, allowing the question to transform you. This isn't about finding definitive answers. It's about living within the question. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke advised, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. Living with the possibility that reality is not what it seems isn't easy. Creating meaning within uncertainty never is. But consider the alternative. Returning to a worldview that your deepest intuition has already recognized as incomplete. The first step is radical acceptance, not of any specific theory about reality, but of mystery itself. The acknowledgement that certainty is the true illusion, that all our models, scientific, religious, philosophical, are maps, not territories. The second step is radical presence. If this is a dream, it's the only one you have access to. Your experience remains real, even if the context of that experience is not what you assumed. Your consciousness remains the one irreducible fact. The third step is radical play. If reality is more malleable than you've been led to believe, what becomes possible? How might your relationship with existence change if you approached it not as solid fact, but as creative dialogue? When you stop forcing experience to conform to your presumptions about reality, you'll find that dissonance was never the problem. The problem was rigid interpretation. What if you approached life not as something happening to you, but as something happening through you? Not as something to figure out, but as something to witness with curiosity and wonder. Look at a tree. Listen to music. Feel the emotions arising within you, whether these experiences are real in the conventional sense or not. The experience itself remains undeniable. Perhaps consciousness itself is the only reality that can't be doubted. This exploration isn't just philosophical abstraction. It's an invitation to a more awakened existence. How many generations have lived and died without ever questioning the nature of reality itself? You stand at the frontier of human consciousness. This channel is not for those seeking comfortable answers. It's for those brave enough to live the questions. The philosopher Alan Watts reminded us that through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. Through our ears, the universe is listening to its harmonies. We are the witnesses through which the universe becomes conscious of its glory, of its magnificence. Whether you're a character in someone else's dream or not, your consciousness remains a miracle, perhaps the only miracle that matters. What part of you resonated with this exploration? What certainties are you now questioning? This community exists for those courageous enough to peer beyond the veil of consensus reality. If you are ready to embrace the mystery rather than cling to certainty, this is your home. Subscribe not for answers, but for companionship on the path of deepening awareness. Remember, what dissolves in this process is not meaning, but the rigid frameworks that have limited your experience of meaning. The philosopher Martin Heidegger suggested that authentic existence begins only when we confront the groundlessness of being. Not by finding firm footing, but by learning to dance on the abyss. Perhaps you've spent years constructing a worldview that felt secure, only to find it cracking under the weight of anomalies it cannot explain. Perhaps you've had experiences, synchronicities, premonitions, moments of inexplicable knowing that no conventional paradigm can accommodate. Perhaps you've followed every established path to understanding reality, only to arrive at the realization that the mystery remains as profound as ever. The ancient Gnostics spoke of awakening to the true nature of reality, not as a single revelation, but as an ongoing process of seeing beyond appearances. This is your awakening. This is your remembering. Consider that your questioning isn't just personal curiosity, but evolutionary necessity. In a world of mounting existential challenges, we need humans who can perceive beyond conventional frameworks more than we need humans who can recite established facts. Consider that your willingness to embrace uncertainty creates permission for others to question their own unexamined presumptions. Your courage to live without fixed answers creates space for genuine exploration. Leave a comment below, sharing a moment when you suspected that reality might not be what it seems. What glitch in the matrix gave you pause? What dream felt more real than waking life? And if this journey into the nature of consciousness resonates with a part of you that has always sensed there's more to reality than meets the eye, subscribe. Not because you need more content, but because you need more companions in the question. Beyond Morpheus isn't just a channel name. It's an invitation to go beyond the dream maker, beyond the illusion master, beyond the comfortable sleep of unquestioned assumptions. The real question isn't whether your life is someone else's dream. The real question is, having glimpsed this possibility, how will you dream differently? The answer awaits in the silence after this video ends.